Okay, what's up, everybody? This is See It, a show about movies and stuff. This is our action edition. I'm so excited to talk action franchises. What brought this about was, we have the amazing John Wick franchise that's continuing this weekend with John Wick 4. I got a chance to see it early. I got a chance to see it early with my friend and critic extraordinaire, who is my guest today, Lanita Cook. Lanita is one of my mentors in the bit, my only mentor in the business. She's the one that's really taught me pretty much everything I know about how to move around this world in terms of film criticism. She is the only black woman critic in the nation with a weekly segment on broadcast television dedicated to her critical reviews, according to the Critical Choice Association. I'm sorry, she's a Critic Choice Association member. I'm sorry that over. According to the Critical Reviews, according to the Critics' Choice Association board member Sean Edwards, if you're from Kansas City, Sean Edwards is a legend. Lanita Cooks is right behind him. So, so excited for Lanita. Anything before? I want you to plug yourself in the beginning and the end of this. Where can people find you?
Now you can find me on Instagram at Lonita Cook. That's LONITACOOK. And I have a air purifier. Or can you hear that? Is that disrupting the flow? Are we good?
I think we're good. I can hear it a little bit, but it's not gonna,
Okay.
I don't think it's gonna
I can
bother
unplug
anybody
it if you
really.
need me to. But and I contribute to KCTV5, CBS affiliate in Kansas City. But if you're interested in my critical reviews, I'm also at blackbeebuzz.com, and I also write for newthinking.com out of the UK.
Thank you, Lydia. And you also see her handle on her name tag there. That is for her Instagram. She's a very good follow on Instagram. Not just about movies, just but life stuff. She's funny on Instagram. She has a lot of cool things on there. So go check her out as well. So like I said, we went and saw John Wick Chapter 4 last week. And I, for one, was blown away by it. So much so that I put a hot take out there that I've been getting some slack about, but I'm standing behind it. I said that after John Wick Chapter 4, that I believe that John Wick has surpassed The Matrix as Keanu Reeves' best franchise. I think that, in fact, I went a little bit farther than that and said that I think that The Matrix, in my opinion, is now his third best franchise. I actually put Bill and Ted over The Matrix as well. And I think that's what got me in a lot of heat and a lot of trouble with folks. But I believe that was my. Now maybe I need to see John Wick Chapter 4 when I'm a little bit away from it, but I think that that's just where I am. I think that The Matrix just has too many flaws in those later films. I didn't prompt Juanita about that. But what do you think about that hot take?
Well, I watched your hot take, and I'm going to have to say, I wasn't mad at it. Um, the Matrix is the original Matrix, the 1999 Matrix is, I would say, my third favorite movie of all time. It used to be my second favorite movie all time, but it was Dune, David Lynch's Dune, my first favorite, and both of those have been knocked down one by Everything Everywhere All at Once. But what keeps the Matrix franchise from being a top tier franchise for me were those sequels. And in your hot take, you said that you liked the fourth one, the fourth Matrix. I had to disagree with you on that one. However, I agree that that because the sequels are flawed and they are structurally flawed, they are philosophically flawed, where the first one is so tight and so fresh and new in so many ways, the technology, I think it keeps the franchise from being great. I agree with you about Bill and Ted. It's amazing. For those of us, we met Keanu Reeves in Bill and Ted, and it was awesome. It rocked. Okay. And the sequel, I think it lived up to it. And I think all the years later that it was released, it was fine, right? Um, so I can agree that John Wick is a better franchise than the two of them. However, if we're going to get into a debate, I'm going to say that the middle two, so the original and four of John Wick, are stellar films. The middle two kick rocks.
Kick rocks. Oh wow, that is strong language. I thought the
For
second one
me,
was
for
really
me.
good too. The third one has a lot of problems for me. I think it was kind of
Yes.
gratuitous for no reason. Where this one makes it. I'm not going to go into spoilers. Go check out my John Wick Chapter 4 review on YouTube. The movie comes out if you want to go to a Thursday screening, Thursday night, but if not, Friday. But what this got me thinking was about what makes a great franchise. And I wanted to bring in Lanita for another reason. You guys know me. You guys know that horror is my main genre. I love fantasy as well. And I love action, but I'm not a action um, expert, if you will. But Lanita Cook is. And so I'm going to be debating, but I'll probably defer a lot to her as well because I think that she has such a grasp on the genre. We're going to be looking at a lot of different franchises to make my top. There's 25 franchises we're going to go through, and we're going to rank them. Let me actually just go to the to what I'm talking about so you can see it. We're going to be ranking the franchises. S tier is like your God tier. And to make this fun, we're going to only allow 5 movies, 5 franchises to be put into that God tier. These are the best of the best. I wouldn't say they're perfect because I don't think any of these franchises are perfect, but they do it the best compared to anybody else. And then everything else is like A, B, C, D. Everybody's been to primary school. Everybody's been to in education. So that's pretty self-explanatory. So to be considered a franchise, I had to limit this. I couldn't have us talking about 75 different franchises and keep Lanita here until tomorrow morning. So I picked 25 franchises, and here are my criteria. If you have problems with it, let me know in the comment section below, or just go off on me on YouTube comments later on. You guys are pretty good at that, so it won't hurt my feelings. But I thought to be a franchise, you have to have 3 movies. So there's going to be stuff like, I'm a huge fan of Drunken Master and The Legend of Drunken Master from Jackie Chan. That's not going to be considered here. You have to have 3 movies. You have to be specifically action oriented. And I define that as basically having guns and swords and weapons and stuff. Also, I define it as having some sort of action star at the center. And I had to get creative on this because there's some, obviously, genre bending and multi-genre action movies. I'm thinking about action sci-fi, action horror, action comedy. And I had to make some distinguishments there based off of how much action is in the movie. So, Predator, for example, you see Predator is one of the movies we're going to look at, franchises we're going to look at, but Alien isn't here. And they're very similar, but I feel like Alien is just much more horror. It's much more sci-fi than a Predator where you have an anamorphic, basically huge alien man that's hunting people. Same thing about action adventure. How did Jurassic Park not make it, but Indiana Jones did? I had to make those distinguishes some sort of way. Also, finally, I wanted to make sure that I covered as much of Hollywood history as possible, or movie history as possible. I didn't want to just focus on franchises from the 80s and 90s, which is, to me, the golden age of action franchises. I wanted to look at some stuff in the 21st century. I wanted to see if I could find some things that was pre-1980. And I did find a couple of things there, here and there, that I think were warrant some space here. So, without further ado, those are the rules. I think Lanita has it right. Lanita, you ready?
I hope so. You keep me on track if I get out of line, though.
All right, sounds good. I think we should just go. I'm not going to go in order because I think that would be kind of boring because these are not. It's kind of uneven if I go in order. But I will go with the first one. Bad Boys. Bad Boys 4 has just been greenlit, and I believe is shooting right now with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. This originally was a Michael Bay production, but it now has a new director, but our stars are still there. Bad Boy has a lot of love in my heart, even though I think that there's some issues with it. What's your first take on Bad Boys, Lanita?
Well, I am a huge fan of Will Smith. I love Martin Lawrence. I think that not enough credit goes to Martin Lawrence for what he accomplished in Hollywood in general, but then also in the comedy world. I consider him among the legends like Eddie Murphy and well, Eddie Murphy is the main one that comes to mind because I don't know if we want to say
Absolutely.
Dave Chappelle yet. I mean, he's still rocking the game, he's still defining the game, but he's a legend. So I love the pairing, and this is kind of something I'm going to say, kind of broadly, is that I think the best action movies are action comedies. I think that you can bring in all kinds of different elements, genre elements, category elements. So it could be, like you said, sci-fi. It could be, you could add a romantic element. But what I really love is when they bring together kind of a straight-laced actor with a comedian and they make magic. And so I have a couple of those on my list.
Absolutely. You know, I think of Martin Lawrence, Richard Pryor, and Eddie Murphy in the same
Yes.
space in terms of being able to transcend just stand up. I think that they are the quintessential, specifically black comics that have been able to do that to the nth degree. There's others, you know, you can think about Adam Sandler and things like that, but the greatest to ever do it, I put Martin Lawrence right up there, so I agree with that. I think that Bad Boys 1 and Bad Boys 3 are my favorite. The second one has some issues for me, but overall, I like this series. My initial thoughts for Bad Boys was I was going to put it in the B column. Did you want to do higher or lower for Bad Boys?
Okay, I will put the original. I would actually put the original in the A column because for me, I'm trying to think if before Bad Boys, usually what we saw in terms of pattern, the two-hander that I'm talking about, where you put the straight-laced actor with the comedian, it's usually multiracial. But for me, this was the first time you had two black men headlining a single title, and it's still doing the Hollywood business that it's expected to do. And so the way that it changed the game, if you will, for me elevates it even more. And we're talking about career catapulting movie for Will Smith.
Absolutely. I mean, Will Smith was the
So
nice guy before Bad Boys, right? He was the Fresh Prince, and that was it, pretty
yes,
much it. I,
yes, yes.
I will.
And what they tried to do with other movies by diversifying his image, they were able to do here with Bad Boys.
I will say for the sake of argument, I'm cool with Bad Boys being an A because it was a high B for me too. So we're gonna go ahead and put Bad Boys in the A column, the A tier. But I will say that in terms of franchises, the way that I think about it is, you know, all of these movies, the reason they became franchises is because they had something really unique or really good about that first film that really brought audiences in. But you have to take the whole filmography when doing your rating because, you know, a lot of these
Oh,
Die Hard. Probably, I mean, maybe it'll still be an tier. I don't know, but the first three films, I think it probably would be an S tier. But you still have Live Free and Die Hard with that. You still have A Good Day to Die Hard with that, and
yes.
those things hit those movies a little bit
I'm gonna
harder. So
say if your expectations are not too high, you can still enjoy those other Die Hard films. I mean, it's not Die Hard original. What's this, 1984 Die Hard? It's not quite that, but it's still a good fun film. So if you're telling me that I have to rate this based on the other films, because Bad Boys 3, this last one that they did, right? I
mhm.
didn't fully enjoy it. I'm not sure that I enjoyed it at all. So let's go ahead and put it, if we're going to say that the original changed the game for Will Smith, and so it did a lot of work, it did a lot of heavy lifting, and it did it well. And that movie belongs in the A column, but the last one belongs in the low C column
Ooh.
for me. Then we'll go ahead and I'll stick with you on the B column.
You know what's funny about that is that I feel that same way about two. I thought two was the weak link
Mm.
of the franchise outside of that great scene where they confront the love interest of her. That was in the second one, right? When they
Yes,
cut
yes.
the little boy out. But I don't know. I thought that the second one had some issues. But either way, you know, it's a B. Let's go back to the end of this list. What do you think about the Transporter franchise? Have you seen any of these films, or do you have any type of feeling about these films?
Yes, yes. This transporter, what's his name? Oh goodness.
Jason Statham.
Jason Statham. I'm trying to remember the first movie I saw Jason Statham in, but I can tell you where I really said, let me go back and explore his work was the second to the last Fast and Furious film. And I love martial arts movies. I grew up on martial arts movies, and I play him to the left as a martial artist. I enjoyed him on screen. I think Italian Job was the first movie I saw him in. And he was cool for me, but he was playing either a C and possibly D character in these movies. And so I didn't give him the strength that he warrants as a martial artist. And so when you see a movie like Transporter and he's carrying that title and then thus the franchise, I had to go back and give respect in retrospect. And so I would say, are you asking me to rate it right now?
And I'll tell you if I agree or not, or if you're crazy.
So I would say in terms of choreography, because what I really love about action, like you said, is the choreography, the weapons work, the hand to hand. I am the kind of person who likes very bodied choreography, and so I really love Jason Statham because he can be very bodied. And I'm not, but, and I'll say this against myself, I'm not as into grappling, right? Like floor grappling, right? So I appreciate Transporter. I'm trying to figure out where I would want to put this one. Let's say C plus.
We agree. I had Transporter at C as well. And the reason I had Transporter at C, not D, it's not that bad. The reason I had Transporter at C is because I think that in terms of Jason Statham, it's funny that this became his main franchise, at least earlier on in his career, because he's so much better in other films like Crank. I think he's better than Fast. I think that Guy Ritchie uses him as a muse very well in all of Guy Ritchie's films that he does with him. So the Transporter films are really kind of like carbon copies of each other. There's not really much that distinguishes the films to me, but they're fun. You can put them on and kind of zone out and be done with it, but they're really kind of a B-rate type of action franchise to me.
Yes.
So
I will say that I've seen the original one twice, and the subsequent ones I saw them and kept it moving. Yeah.
Let's go back to some legends. Beverly Hills Cop, starring Eddie Murphy, Reinhold, and the whole crew. Started in the 80s,
Yes.
one of the films that really catapulted. Did 48 Hours come before this? I think 48 Hours came before this, right? Or was it Beverly Hills
I
Cop
think
first?
48 Hours did come before this one, but they're very similar. I think 48 Hours and Beverly Hills Cop. It's hard to say because Eddie Murphy just had a cluster of movies in the 80s that were just all hits, Midas touch. So
Yeah. I think that the first film, it made $1 gazillion. I think that it really cemented grown adults. In my mind, that Axel Foley character, I've really looked at him as an adult as opposed to his Saturday Night Live sketches. And then even 48 Hours, even though he's like a slick kind of type of guy, he really felt more like a teenager / young adult in those films where he was completely established in Beverly Hills Cop to me. I love Beverly Hills Cop 2 as well. The third one is what kind of messes this up because it just is super long and really bad. You remember the one where they were in like the this is the third one was
park.
The amusement park.
Okay. I love that movie.
You love the third one. Oh my goodness.
Yes, let me tell you something. I used to go around and tell people, okay. Like it I think it kind of capitalizes on that silly sense of humor that Eddie Murphy had. It was not as tight of a cop movie as the first two. I will agree with that, but some cute Eddie Murphy-ness going on. I enjoyed it. I'm trying to think how old I was when 3 came out, and why I would have enjoyed it anyways. Because at this point, it's a piece of nostalgia for me, and so I appreciate it. But at the time that it came out, I think it was, a teenager, with less refined tastes, and so it appealed to that age demographic that I was repping.
1994 is what it says online. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Okay. Well, I, for one, think that the first two films are so good that I have Beverly Hills Cop in the A tier for my, even with the third one, not liking the third one. You like the third one. So I was going to put
Yes.
this in A tier if that's okay with you. Or did you
But
think it was.
I stick with A tier. I would have, yeah, Beverly Hills Cop. This is about Axel Foley. He's a Detroit beat cop, right? And
Mm-hmm.
or is he a detective? I think he's a beat cop. And his a friend of his comes to him with a proposal, and that friend gets killed, and then he has to go investigate why and who. So who done it and why done it. And these are my two favorite things. And I think usually they're done separately, but this one is done together, the who done it and the why done it. I think that's great. So I will agree. Let's go with A. I'm going to say
Okay.
A. Yeah.
Also, these can move around as much as we want. If we end up getting more than five in the S tier, then we are going to have to make some decisions eventually. But yeah, I think A is perfect for that. Um, this is going to be a hard one. I want to see where you're going to go with this. We have the king of all action, Arnold Schwarzenegger, in the Terminator.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So the
Now,
Terminator is
also, I'll say this
so,
to just remind you, the Terminator. I guess he's in most of all of these movies anyway, other than Salvation. But the Legacy sequels count. So Genesis or Genesis, whatever it's called, Salvation, all of those films are a part of the franchise and have to be
and and
considered when
and,
ranking.
and the Sarah Connor that was on TV, all of that. Yeah. So I'm gonna say this. The only one that I didn't like, and I don't even remember the name of it, um, was the one where I don't where he was from the. I can't even remember the plot. It was so ridiculous. I don't even remember the plot of it. He kind of looked like a sharper image toy. He was from the future. Um, which one was this? I'm gonna look it up because you're
Salvation
right.
was with
What?
a adult John Connor leading the resistance, and he
Yes.
found kind of like a CGI Arnold Schwarzenegger that was like basic. He hadn't been activated yet, but he was like in that room. I remember that part of that film. And
It's
then
it's so many of them. It's hard.
Genesis is when I think he came. He was came from the future, and then there was a
Yeah,
movie that
that's the
came
one I
after.
don't like.
There was a movie that came after Genesis where he was like,
Yes, with the girl from so Dark Fate I liked. I liked. I didn't love, but I did like Dark Fate. Genesis I did not like it at all. And to the point where so here's the thing, just speaking broadly about franchise, and that goes for John Wick as well. And you touched on it earlier. You kind of understand that a movie deserves, let's use the word deserves a sequel when it's mind-blowing. It gives you something so surprising, something so new. And I think the Terminator did that. In another 1984 was just a great year for movies. 1984 was just a banging year for movies. And so the Terminator, the original, was absolutely incredible. For me, Judgment Day, cool. All the way through. I enjoy Salvation. That's the one where they were in the bunker, right?
mm-hmm. That's the one with
I like that one.
Batman was
Oh, what's his
John
name?
Connor. Why can't I think of his name?
Yeah,
Batman.
yeah,
I don't know why I can't think of his name either. I'm gonna
Um,
feel
I can't
real
think of his name. I'm terrible with names, but Christian Bale. And
Christian Bale.
so it right it yeah, it had
Hmm.
Christian Bale. I've seen that multiple times. And was it Claire Danes? Was she also in it? Who else was in that?
Claire Danes was in
Who
it.
was the girl in that? And yeah, and so I really enjoyed that one. The only one that I thought was out of place, and because here's the thing, any film, any of the movies in the franchise, it has to at least carry over the spirit of the original. If you get so far away, because I think after 8 movies, but a franchise, and I think the greatest franchise, and I will say this, is not my top franchise for what we're doing here, but I do think the greatest franchise of all time is Star Trek, and Star Trek is always Star Trek. Yes, yes. And so Genesis was unable to preserve the spirit of what the Terminator is. I think it was a betrayal of that. So, because Genesis is in it, I would give it. Are you asking me for my rating? I'm gonna say B
Hmm.
plus.
B. That's lower
Mm-hmm.
than I had it. I still had it at A tier, even though I didn't like Dark Fate or
Mm-hmm.
Salvation. I still had, because the first two are so strong. But I wouldn't, because
Mm-hmm.
B plus is right there where I was too. So I'm kind of fine with Terminator being the B. Side note, you said Star Trek. I don't know how much you know how big of a Star Trek fan I am. I am a Trekker to the core. If I was to turn my computer around, you would see literally about 8 or 9 different starships on my wall, and books and all kind of things. So that's I'm glad that you love,
Yes.
even though there's a lot of unevenness with that franchise too. But I'm with you. I'm
I
with you.
mean, it can be, but we do have to think about when did the first Star Trek come out? Was it like 1966 or something like that?
It
You
was
know,
65,
it's
66. Uh-huh.
yeah, and it's even all the way down to Picard. It gives you exactly what Star Trek has always been, the intent and the wonder, like the thing that makes you a Trekkie. It, all the way, all these years, they all give it to you, even if it's a little bit off or a little bit reimagined. It gives it to you. This Genesis movie, wonk wonk.
If anybody has any comments, please feel free to put them in the section. I see that Lindsay wants to do Mad Max next, so we can talk about Mad Max. Mad Max is our next franchise. It is, where's Mad Max at? So this is all the Mel Gibson movies as well as Fury Road. So you got Mad Max, Road Warrior. I can't remember the third film name off the top of my head, and then Fury Road.
Mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm. So I'm going to tell you, I saw Mad Max Fury Road at B&B Theater. So they have that theater where you can sit and have an experience. And so
Mm-hmm.
imagine watching Mad Max with air blowing in your face and them squirting water on you and the seats rumbling whenever they're driving over terrain. It was a crazy movie going experience for me. And so I have to preface my response with that. With that.
I wish I was with you. I wish I was with you. Well, let me start with this one.
Yes, go ahead.
I think that Mad Max, especially the original films that kind of fell, I thought that there would be a return to people rediscovering Mad Max after Fury Road came out, but that didn't happen, even though Fury Road was so good. Mad Max doesn't really have any bad films to me. I like the original. I like Beyond the Thunderdome. I like the Road Warrior. There's a film, I'm looking at the filmography now, Mad Max: The Wasteland. I've never even heard of that. Um, Mad Max: The Wasteland. Oh, that hasn't came out yet, so that's why. It's the sequel to Fury Road. I don't even know if that's
Mm-hmm.
still happening. But Mad Max, as of right now, it might move, but I had Mad Max as an S tier franchise for me.
Mm. I'm gonna say the original movies with Tina Turner. Um, for me, it was hard to live up to that. Does George Miller have an Academy Award? I think he does, right? George Miller, who directed Fury Road. I think he's an Academy Award winning director.
Did he get some for Babe randomly? I think it was like for Babe, like writing or something. For
So I I will say that without having so you can have Tom Hardy, who I think is one of the best actors of our time, and Charlize Theron, who I think is another one of the best actors of our time, and one of the most beautiful. And um, she is, for me, an action goddess. What she does in Atomic Blonde is sensational. The way that she carries the choreography and is able to deliver it. Um, but for me, the significance of the movie was left in the 80s.
mm.
So Fury Road was only okay for me. Um, and I think that some of the visual updates kind of take away from what the original was able to say, was able to, because for me, when original Mad Max came out, I can't remember being a Tina Turner fan before that movie. I knew of Tina Turner, but I felt like she was a an artist of my parents' generation. And then
Mm-hmm.
after that movie, I was obsessed with Tina Turner. I've seen her in concert multiple times, and so there was just something about the elevation of this icon that that movie was able to do that Fury Road didn't deliver for any of the people in it. It didn't elevate anybody in the movie. They came to the movie amazing and they stayed as amazing as they were when they came in,
Mm-hmm.
right? Tina Turner was amazing, but I think a part of why she's an icon is because she took on that role.
I have a real big blind spot for Tina Turner outside of What's Love Got to Do with It. To be honest with you and her music. So I mean, of course, I've watched these movies, but I don't know if it affected me the same way in terms of Tina Turner in those movies. But I can see that. Mad Max Fury Road was just an adrenaline rush. It just never stopped. It just there was not a movie that I can think of with such
Yeah.
a pace that was unrelenting and unforgiving as Mad Max Fury Road had. So that's why I had it so high. But it sounds like you're
I
not
should
ready to
have
put
seen it.
in.
I should have seen it in a regular movie theater because you're right, it was nonstop. But because I saw it in the not even the rumble seats, because the rumble seats are regular seats that kind of rumble when stuff happens. But this is like kind of the roller coaster, like the seats move and they really do. Like when something stinks in the movie, they'll spray something stinky in your face.
Oh
That was
wow.
the wrong way to see Fury Road. Yeah, it was the wrong way to see it. And so responding to it, I know has a lot to do with the way that I saw it as well.
I had to take some aspirin and some heart medication afterwards because I probably was going to be in the hospital. So raging. So I'm going to. We'll come back to Mad Max. I'll put it back in. I'll put it in A for now since you're a little iffy on it. But we'll see where our S tiers.
No, no, I'll put it in B minus.
You're putting it in B. I can't go lower than A on Mad Max. On Mad Max,
I
really?
gotta go B minus. I gotta go B minus. So for me, I was extremely turned off by some of the visuals in Fury Road. Like I could barely get past um, the breastfeeding montage, the breastfeeding farm. I just stuff like that was just kind of like it felt more like trying to be salacious and shock factory, and I didn't like it.
So
It
you
didn't
you
sit well
think
with me.
so? Fury Road was bad enough for you that it would discount the other three films too to put it all the way down to B.
Um, I would say I'm also thinking about other franchises that we are talking about that don't have a movie that offended me, like Fury
Okay.
Road. Yeah. Yeah. And so, because the way that I'm understanding our rating here, movies that go in the A column will become our S God movies, right?
No, I was just going to do S tier now, but the as we go through it, we can move things around. The A, B, C, and D
Okay.
tier don't have a limit. It's just the S tier that has a limit of 5. But you can put everything else could be
Okay.
A if we wanted to, but
Okay.
it's just the
Okay.
S tier.
Okay.
So um, okay, well, you're like I said earlier, you're the expert, so I'll put Mad Max in B, but that hurts me.
Well, no, no, no,
You're
no. On a franchise like this, let me be very clear. I understand that fans love this franchise. Other than because I loved Mel Gibson, I loved Tina Turner. Other than the nostalgia of that movie for me, that the first three, this is not my franchise.
dumb.
Yeah.
Speaking of this is not my franchise, let's go to something I think hopefully will be easy. The Kingsman. This is the secret agent kind of meta
Mm-hmm.
riff on the secret
Mm-hmm.
agent James Bond type of film starring Taron Egerton. The first one took the world by storm, and then we got 2 subsequent movies
Mm-hmm.
after that. What are your thoughts on the
Mm-hmm.
Kingsman? So Kingsman
I
1,
thought we would come.
Golden Circle, and then the legacy sequel, The King's Man.
Mm-hmm. 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 So I thought we would probably come back and do an episode called "The World's Worst Action Franchise Movies," and The Kingsman would go in on that show. This one for me, such a terrible franchise. Um, it's almost like they said we created this really inventive action movie. How can we destroy it? You know, that's what I felt about the second two movies. And so I would get, you said A B C D. Let's put this one in the D column.
That's where I had the Kingsman 2. No need to go too much in detail in that. The first one I love, even the weird accent of Samuel L. Jackson, but then the Golden Circle and everything after the Golden Circle. Samuel L. Jackson was in the Golden Circle, right? I can't. Maybe I'm running them too. The King's Man with Ray Fiennes. I think I just like Ray Fiennes more than the actual movie. But the second movie was so
I
bad.
love Ray Fiennes. I
It's
saw
just
him as Hamlet, Broadway in what 1995. I believe it was at the Barrymore. I think it was at the Barrymore. Oh, I've been in love with him ever since. I love Ray Fiennes so much. Yes.
I'm glad that Taron Egerton ran away from this series after the second film, and I hope he never comes back because that was terrible.
Yes. Yes.
Let's
Yeah, I think you know that you have a problem when you have to recast an actor. The actors, where they are in their career, they're trying to grow in their career, and they know that this one is going to diminish the possibilities, and then they run. You know, it's most likely going to be just terrible, and it is.
let's go across the pond a bit. Not to let's just go ahead and take care of James Bond right now. I think James Bond is an easy one. Now, there's like 1,000 movies in this franchise, but the reason why Bond has staying power is pretty evident to me. I was going to break this
Yes.
out into different eras in terms of the actual Bond characters, but that would have been too much, so I just put it all at once because I said legacy sequels count, and all of those movies are legacy sequels. So James Bond, we have the all the way from Sean Connery to Daniel Craig. I think it's at least 30 movies. What are your thoughts on? Are you a James Bond fan? I guess I should start there. Did I lose you? So I think I lost. I lost Ladita. I'm sure she's going to come back, but I'm going to keep on going while she's doing it. James Bond is a institution. There are bad James Bond films, but there's not that many. They're either really fun or they're excellent. I think that even the Roger Moores and things like that have something to like about them. But when James Bond is good, it's really good. And I think that since there's so many films, and so many of those films are B or A level, that James Bond has to go into the S tier. I'm gonna do this while she's gone. We'll see what she says when she gets back. But I think James Bond has to be our first S tier film, franchise pretty easily. Lanita's joining back in now. Give me just a second, guys. While we're waiting on Lanita to get back in, I'm gonna read some of the comments here. Rashad said he doesn't think you know movies. Rashad is a genius, so he's probably correct on that. But I'm trying to learn all I can. Lindsay says that she loves Charlize. Charlize was actually on a list of top female action stars that I did for my website. You can check that out at brianknowsmovies.com. I think that you will get a kick out of that list. We have everybody from Michelle Yeoh to you name it. So she's still trying to come in. I don't know what happened. There she is. Can you hear me?
Hey, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you too. I'm sorry about that. Something must have happened with the connection there. Um, I
It's
was reading some of the
most likely my
comments.
connection.
Reading some of the comments. There's some people who are angry at you for your Mad Max take,
Yes,
but
yes. That's why I had to say I know when the viewers love a movie and it's just not my movie. I'm so sorry. It just ain't. I mean, I like the Thunderdome. Okay, fine. Um, but it just didn't strike me like that. But I know that it has its fans. That's why I did the business that it did, and that's why I got the I guess we're gonna call it a sequel, visiting, because people love it. I'm not one of those people.
while you were gone, I made the executive decision to put the James Bond in the S tier. I hope that you agree with that and you're not a James Bond hater. I didn't know if that was the case or not.
No, no, no. I've read most of the Ian Fleming novels. When we were talking about the rating, James Bond was the only one that I had in the S tier. It is, and here's the thing. I think that I've enjoyed all of the Bond. I enjoy the conversation that we're having around who's going to be the next Bond. I didn't as much think the very last movie was as even as it could have been. Um, but overall, it is my favorite action series. Yeah, franchise.
We're on, well, it's not my favorite. My favorite's coming up, and I feel like you're probably going to fight me on it, and I'm going to win that battle. But we'll see when it comes up. But yeah,
Okay.
but James Bond is definitely S tier. Sandra Harris agrees as well, S tier for James Bond. So it looks like everybody, even in the chat,
Yes.
are in agreement with us. Let's go way, way back. And this is a series of films that I'm not sure if any of my followers have really got into it, because it's in a subgenre of film that doesn't really gravitate to a lot of people, especially a lot of younger people. I like them. I like some of them, the spaghetti westerns. I don't like any of the John Wayne stuff, but because of the way that they treat Native Americans in a lot of his films. But
Hmm. Hmm.
I like the spaghetti westerns. I like Tombstone and some of those films that came in, the Clint Eastwood stuff. And one of his franchises that I have is the Dollars franchise. That's the good, the bad, the ugly, a fistful of dollars, and a few dollars more. Lenny and I have never talked about westerns. What's your thought on westerns, and what are your thoughts on the Dollars franchise?
So here's the thing. I love westerns, but my mother was obsessed with westerns. Like, I've seen every Clint Eastwood movie, but this was like, and my mother was also a Trekkie, and so this, I have to say this because western is something that I affiliate again with my parents, and I love them. I think that. In terms of action movies, there's a lot of excitement. I think that the best westerns are going to be your Kurosawa. You know, these shots, the way that we're setting the scene, visually setting the scene. A lot of what we do in westerns, I believe, come from Kurosawa, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I I appreciate the creative lineage, right? How the creativity, how the imagination travels through borrowing, through reimagining, right? All of those sorts of things. Um, and I'm trying to think: do I really like the sand and the hats and the right? I just watched. I'm rewatching Supernatural,
Mm-hmm.
the TV series, and I just watched.
Which is not a
Uh,
western, but just from audience, you know. But it's
yeah,
good.
yeah, it's not a western, but there's an episode where they get. I'm trying to. Should I spoil this? There's an episode where they get sucked back in time into the old west, and so a part of the joke is um, Sam and Dean are brothers and they fight ghosts, right? And Dean is obsessed with westerns. And a part of the running joke of the episode is all of the stuff that he thinks a western was when he gets back in time, he realizes it's just all Hollywood stuff. And that's not how it actually was. And so I'm wondering for my own self, do I really like all the stuff that we attribute to the American western, right? Um, or do I like the relationships and the processes and stuff? So, yes, I love Westerns, but what I love about them, I haven't really, sat down and said, this is why I love Westerns.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I watched a lot of TV when I was a kid, a lot of TV by myself, and I tend to gravitate
Yes.
towards things that my friends and my brothers thought were really boring because they just didn't give it a chance. Westerns being one. I used to watch westerns with my grandmother. Speaking of the connection there, and then
Yes.
also Star Trek. People hated Star Trek that was around me. The only thing I had that was really geeky back in the day that people liked was anime. Anime was a big thing when I was in high school, but I was a big Star Trek person too. Anyway, I think that going back to this Sierra Leone trilogy of films, I don't think that there's a bad one in there. I think that they are an acquired taste though, so I'm not ready to go S tier with them. But it would be pretty hard for me to go anything less than an A with the Dollars franchise, unless you want to make your case.
No, no. So we're gonna say, for me,
Mm-hmm.
B
This this
plus,
is this
B plus.
okay. Well, I'm putting it in A because B plus is closer than
Yeah,
A.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I say B plus. Oh, yes, Akira Kurosawa. Yes, I'm reading the comments, so bear with me. Yes, is a filmmaker that influences so many of the filmmakers that you know, from your Tarantino to your Fuquas. They all talk about Kurosawa. Um, and if you're interested in film, being a filmmaker, being a film critic, these are movies and a director that you have to know.
One of my favorite films last year was Living, starring Bill Nye. and that screenplay was adapted from a Akira Kurosawa film called Ikaro, which was, I mean, it's pretty much the same movie except for that it's in London instead of Japan. But yeah, I need to actually brush up on some Kurosawa myself. I've seen some of his stuff, but not nearly enough for me to understand the scope of what he's done for film. I'm going to keep it going. I feel like we got a lot to go, and we're almost at the hour mark, so we're going to run through some of these kind of quick that probably won't have that much conversation. Let's go with Sylvester Stallone. He has a couple of franchises here. He may be a franchise king himself. Arnold Schwarzenegger didn't do a lot of franchises like Sylvester Stallone did, but let's go to his most recent franchise. I can't remember if this or Escape Plan is his most recent franchise, but I think we've had an Expendables movie since the Escape Plan. So the Expendables is where he basically gets all of your action stars from the 80s and the 90s and now even the 2000s together to go on missions, basically. For those who've never seen any of the Expendable films, he brings everybody in for cameos to just full out roles in these films. I like these films, but I also will admit that my like for them is the nostalgia, which is what I think that's what the movies are based upon. These are not good films. I'll say that straight up. I don't think that these are good films. They are a guilty pleasure of mine, but for me to say that they were good films would be discredit to any type of expertise people think I have for me to say that. So that's where I am with that.
No. I'm going to have to disagree with you. Like, I feel like films do different things. Some of them are technical brilliance, right? Some of them are like beautifully executed, but some of them bring your friend groups together. Some of them are party films. Some, you know what I'm saying? Some of them are the films that you're going to get your lines that you're going to be saying years to come, like Beverly Hills Cop 3 for me. I understand that technically is not at the level of the first two, but there were some lines in there that I call back to, and laugh at. Sometimes films do different things, and the nostalgia factor is huge. Nostalgia is a huge thing for filmmakers to draw on. When you're making movies, you're thinking about what emotions can you elicit. And right now, nostalgia is one of the top ones that you're saying, yo, I can make people who grew up on Goonies, I can make them love this film, right? And that's something you can sell.
See, she spinned it and made me look like, made me feel bad for feeling bad for liking the Expendables. Okay, it's not a guilty pleasure, it's a pleasure. The Expendables is now a pleasure of mine. I had the Expendables coming into this as a C tier type of franchise, similar to the Transporter, even though I think it's a lot more memorable than the Transporter franchise. I don't think that it's just, like the Kingsman is bad. So I didn't have it that low. But what did you think, Lanita?
I would say C+. Like I said, the 80s was a hot time for action, right? Everybody was getting an action movie. I wish that Action Jackson had 2 more movies so we could talk about like everybody got an action movie, and so to see all these cats come back together and just like have fun. Right, you're having fun because they're having fun. So I'm gonna say C+. Yeah.
He basically did what Adam Sandler does. He got a bunch of his friends together to make some money and have some fun and go into these really crazy locations, and the fans have fun with them, right? Even though critics like us may not be able to write glowingly about them in terms of the technical aspects, but the fun is there. So I'm with you with that. Speaking of a fun franchise for me anyway, Charlie's Angels. It's the only female franchise I have on this list. I could not think of another one. I'm sorry if there's something that I missed here. And there's like the Underworld franchise and a couple others, but I feel like they were just too sci-fi fantasy to be considered a true action franchise. But Charlie's Angels was a great 2000s run. And then we also had a legacy sequel that came out a couple of years ago, I think 2019, with Kristen Stewart. I like these films. I can't really... They're popcorn films. I don't know if they were summer films. I can't remember that far, but they're popcorn films. They're fun. They're light. They're really simple. just like the TV show was. And I think that Drew Barrymore, Lucy Liu, and why am I
Cameron
blanking?
Diaz.
Cameron Diaz were
Yes.
all equally fun in these films. So I liked it a lot. What's your take on Charlie's Angel?
I'm gonna give it a B. Yeah, I loved all the movies. I, I I I express my feminism in a different way than we typically see. Um, I think that there's a version of feminism that's too anti-man for me. But but taking a broadly feminist view at action films, I think that this is a great way not only to feature women in action roles, but then also to they look like they were having a good time together. They didn't look like they were bickering and quabbling amongst themselves, which is a reputation that women have on set. And so I really appreciate that these women look like they were professionals. They knew how to do their jobs. They made the money the movies made the money that they needed to make for them to get the sequels, and they seemed like they were professionals with each other, and all of them individually were stars. Drew Barrymore has been a star since she was in the single digits, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Lucy Liu, star in her own, and then Cameron Diaz, beautiful, but she also is very fit. And so you could maybe anticipate that bringing the three of them together, they might tug of war. Who's going to get the most attention? And I appreciated that they seemed like they were willing to share. It was enough to go around. This ain't a zero-sum game. And because of that, we were all able to enjoy. So, yeah. High marks.
High marks for Charlie's Angels. Let's go across the Pacific to China. Police Story. Jackie Chan. I should have had us do our list earlier today, but Jackie Chan is my top 5 action star of all time, and he's not 5. He's way up there for me. The Police Story franchise is really more of a universe. I mean, you have the I think it's 4 Police Story films now, but you also have Super Cop. You have where he's playing the same detective in Super Cop. You have Operation Condor. No, Operation Condor is not a part of it. That's his second franchise. But you have Super Cop. You have. Why can't I think of the other?
Yeah, I just looked at it myself, and Police Story. It's a trilogy, and you have.
So you have the trilogy of Police Story, and then you have Super Cop, and you have First Strike. First Strike was the other film I was looking
Was
about.
it First Strike?
First Strike. He's playing Detective Chan, and the same Detective Chan in First Strike as well.
You taking it back though. You taking it back.
They all tied. They all tied together. I think that there are 2 movies I would consider bad out of like the 7 that are in this series. Not bad, but just not as good as the other ones. I really, really like a Police Story franchise. I like the choreography. I love what Jackie Chan does. I will say that in terms of the plot development of these films, it's very thin. There's some detective type of stuff, but you don't really care about it because it's not really clear how they're putting the things together in any of these films. But you go there for the action, and you're there for Jackie Chan's charisma on film. Even though the plot is thin, you get invested in the films too, still because of Police Story. I'll also say that in the franchise, he got better and better in terms of trying to incorporate women in a positive way in his films. At first, if they were just like most 80s women were, they were just kind of like eye candy. But, eventually by Super Cop, they're kicking ass right next to him, and they're doing things right next to him too. So I have Police Story very high. That's my pitch for Police Story. I have Police Story in my eyes as an A-tier type of franchise. But let's see what Lanita thinks.
So I'm gonna say this. I'm trying to think if I agree that Jackie Chan, you said Jackie Chan is your favorite action hero of all time?
He's top five. He's probably number three. He's probably number three.
Number three? Okay. Yeah, I would say he's probably number two or three for me. I know he's not top for me, but um I will say that I have not seen a Jackie Chan movie that I didn't like. But I am more of a Lee Leong J girl, and we know him as Jet Li.
Mm-hmm.
I'm lean more toward his style, um, his Wong Fei Hung movies. Um, so, and I know a lot of people say, would you choose Jet Li or Jackie Chan? I lean into Jet Li, but Jackie Chan is he's a master, right? He's a master. So I'm gonna say for Police Story, and I haven't seen them in a very long time. I'm gonna do B plus tier.
You know what's close to B plus? Isn't A pretty close to B plus?
It might be close.
Well, I'm going
Yeah.
to average it out because I have it like 95% for me. So I'm going to put it in
Okay, so
A.
people are talking about Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider, uh, there's, I guess there, so, because you said finding movies with women, right?
Mm-hmm.
As the lead.
I didn't consider Tomb Raider as a straight up action franchise. It has two films, I think, and then there's a legacy sequel that came. But I consider it more like a video game movie than an actual action. That's why I don't have any superhero films in here either.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
it's really more semantics more than anything. I guess is why I didn't include it because there's so many franchises. But that was one of the films that didn't make the list just because of the semantics of how I was thinking about action.
Yeah, yeah. I think you could go ahead and redefine what we're doing here because like when you say underworld, I know that it's because it's a genre film, right? That we don't have it on the list, right? But when we say action franchise, what are we considering action franchise?
I didn't have any video game or comic book stuff because it would just be too much. If it just to be honest, it'd just be too many franchises to go through, and I wouldn't know which ones to add and which ones to take off. So that's
Right
really
on.
really the main reason why they got eliminated for stuff like Tomb Raider, Underworld, Resident Evil as well has a lot of films with I forget the lead. She was the person who was in Fifth Element. I can't think of her name right now, but
Oh,
her Resident
yeah,
Evil
I don't want to say
films.
it wrong. She started out as a supermodel, and so for her to go from a big time supermodel to Resident Evil was like, oh my goodness! Like I thought that was a really great transition. Yeah, uh,
Hmm.
it's a Russian name, right?
Yeah, I can't.
I don't want to say it wrong. I'm gonna look it up. And was she also in that Bruce Willis movie,
The
Mila Jovovich?
Mila
Mila,
Jovovich, yeah,
Mila.
Mila Jovovich. She was in the Fifth Element. That's where I first saw her was in Fifth Element before the Resident Evil films.
Yes, yes.
It,
I remember that's a great action movie, but it's not a franchise. I remember the Blue Alien, greatest
hmm
addition to a movie. Yes,
Chris Tucker, amazing in that film.
yes, yes.
Okay, so we are about halfway through, and we are
Oh
at the
my.
hour mark. So we need to we need to probably speed it up. It's probably because I'm talking too much, but there's a lot of great
No, it's
franchises
me.
we're
It's
gonna.
me.
I'm going to go ahead and go to where I think we're going to have some consensus, one way or the other. Let's talk about Taken. I'll let you have the first words on Taken.
I like a movie that with like an action movie similar to John Wick. That's really a simple concept. You took my kid. I'm coming for you. You don't know who you're dealing with. Like I love it. And then um, and then the subsequent movies, I found them to be um, kind of memorable, but not as much, right? And I feel the same way about John Wick, by the way. And so for this franchise, I think it's done a really great job keeping Liam Neeson alive. Um, in terms of his career, reinventing his career, giving him a place in the business. Because before action movies, and particularly Taken, I'm trying to think, how did we know Liam Neeson? I knew him from that 80s movie where he played a ghost and he kept showing up in the shower of this chick, you know, and he like, this is where I knew Liam Neeson from. And so I'm trying to remember before Taken, what did we know about him?
Schindler's List is probably his biggest role
Yeah.
with Steven Spielberg, and then he was in a lot of romantic, I don't say comedies, but romantic movies, and then he had a couple of kind of like fantasy type of I can't remember the name of it, but it's like a Knights of the Round Table type of film, you know. But he didn't. So he wasn't really an action star.
Yeah, I think Taken really gave him a distinguished name, which is, I think, an important thing for a movie to do, to make you a general household name. C plus?
C plus. Okay. I'll put it in C. I actually had Taken in D. I thought that Taken is like the most overrated franchise on this list. Is the first movie is basically him giving a speech, and he has a couple good kill scenes in there, and the movie makes sense. But after that, none of those sequels make sense. I feel like every other kind of like Taken, like not every other Taken, but most of the other Taken like films that Liam Neeson did after that were better than that second and third film in the Taken franchise. But I can live with C because, you know, it's fine. But I think it's pretty overrated. Let's see. Let's go with some of these are. I'm trying to avoid arguments because I want to keep Lanita as a friend, but I feel like we're going to argue about a lot of these. But
let's argue. Let's get into it.
Let's just go into it. Mission Impossible, starring the man Tom Cruise, who is also in my top 5 action guys of all time. We now have 6 films in the franchise: Mission Impossible 1, 2, and 3. We have Ghost Protocol, we have Rogue Nation, and then Fallout. I think that personally, the weakest link is Mission Impossible 2, the John Woo directed film. Not so much that it's bad, but because it's just kind of like a cheesy early 90s, every cliche you can think of type of film. But after that, I have a hard time finding any weaknesses with good old Mission Impossible. I think that the score, here's a hot take for the internet, I think Mission Impossible score is better than James Bond's score in terms of iconic and just thrilling inside of the movie.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I think that the Mission Impossible score is better than the James Bond score.
Wow.
Yeah.
But when you say score, you mean the musical composition?
Yeah, the dun 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 dun. I think that's better than the dun dun. That's the James Bond. Doom, doom,
I see. Yeah.
I'm horrible. I'm completely out of key, but yeah.
I know. I'm with Michael on this one. I'm with Michael. What is happening right now? Yeah. So okay. I'm gonna say. The first Mission Impossible was really great. I'll be honest with you, I don't recall watching the show.
I've never watched the show.
Yeah, I don't recall watching the show. I watched Get Smart, but I didn't watch this one. So I don't know in terms of adaptation, but I agree with you about Tom Cruise. He is an action star. And he keeps doing it. Like what he did with Maverick was like, huh? Like, how are you 5 million years old and you still bringing it like yesterday? You know, it's like amazing what he's able to do in terms of action. It's a lot of movies in this franchise, and I don't think that they have the same impact. Each movie, I don't think that they have the same impact as a long running franchise like Bond or Star Trek. I just don't. I think what they do is they're good tentpole summer blockbuster movies. They do their business, but they're not like, nobody's like dressing up as Tom Cruise and going to a convention, right? Like, it's an okay franchise for me. Good movies, but they're just, for me, a string of summer blockbuster type tentpole movies that bring a lot of people to the movie theater. But other than that, they're just that.
I mean, you have the Mission Impossible if you choose to accept it, the thing blowing up. You have the mask. You have all of the stunts that Tom Cruise does in these films. Him and Jackie Chan are the only ones that are willing to put their bodies on the lives on the line for these films like that. In my opinion, this is why I knew the first fight was going to come, because Mission Impossible is an S tier for me. It's going to be hard. S tier is Mission Impossible for me. It's going to be very hard for me to go anything under A for Mission Impossible. I think that it is better. I don't think that it's as good as James Bond, because James Bond has the legacy and they have more films to counter the Mission Impossible films. But you're going to be hard pressed for me to find any of the other franchises that are left that are going to have the same quality of films that Mission Impossible does.
I'm gonna have to say that the things that you love about Mission Impossible, with the masks and the thing blowing up, this is something that was already in the franchise from the show, right? Right. This is not something. Yeah, this isn't something that Tom Cruise is like, yo, what if we added this? This would like really make this so much better, and really like it's not. He's not creating something to delight. Like, he's only doing stuff that exists, and then he's not adding anything to delight new fans, to create new. I don't want to offend nobody, because S tier is pretty high. Maybe that first movie.
So maybe to go over the rest of the films, because we do have 4 more spots for S tier. I guess we don't have to fill up all 4 spots, but there is Bourne, Die Hard, Fast and Furious, Indiana Jones, Ip Man, John Wick, Lethal Weapon, Mission Impossible, Predator, Rambo, RoboCop, Rush Hour, Shaft. So of those, are there 4, and then also the A's that we already have, are there anything that are just like automatic S tiers for you?
Lethal Weapon.
I could get with Lethal Weapon barely. For Lethal Weapon was an A tier for me. I think that the third one has some problems, but it's a smaller.
The third one that has Chris Rock in it. I guess Chris Rock is in 3 and 4, right?
Or is it the fourth? The fourth one is the one that's really bad. Then I forgot that there was
the one with Jet Li.
The Jet Li fight is the Jet Li fight is great. At the end, the Jet Li fight in that film is great. That movie is not good. Lethal Weapon 4 is not good. It's not good.
I mean, here's the thing: the entire franchise is pretty racist. You know, I will say it's pretty racist.
I will say what I do appreciate about Lethal Weapon in terms of race, though, is that they were willing to give us a different type of villain outside of like Russians in the 80s, when they made the South Africans the villain in Lethal Weapon 2 and now racist South. I appreciated that about Lethal Weapon 2, but yeah.
Yeah, that movie was the first place I heard the word kafir, and it's like, wow, you know, this thing is global. Okay, gotcha. And so I don't know, like, one thing that I think was very important about when we were calling back to our conversation on Bad Boys, is back then in the 80s, I felt, at least broadly speaking, I felt like the majority of Black actors, if they wanted to headline a big picture, right? Meaning a studio film, it had to be a two-hander, and most likely with someone who is not Black. And so that's where you're going to get your 48 hours, your Beverly
Mm-hmm.
Hills Cop, your even your Rush Hour. I would put Rush Hour in that category. This is later than the 80s, but still, this is a formula that has worked for, I mean, even when Will Smith first started
Mm-hmm.
with Enemy of the State, he's
The, the first movie I saw that went, it was actually Sidney Poitier. I can't remember the name of the film, but they were like escape convicts, and they were like chained to each other. What's the name of that film? Way back in the 60s. It's the Defiant Ones, not the Defiant. Is it the Defiant Ones? It was some Sidney Poitier where he was chained. Was it? I don't know if it was Robert Redford. It was somebody he was chained to, and they had to escape prison, and they were like
mm,
getting to. It was like a race movie, and he had a couple of those where he was
yeah,
like connected
yeah,
with white actors to like the heat of the night and stuff
yeah,
like that to try to talk about race.
yes. Yeah, well, and well, these are movies where they're necessarily talking about race. I think this is a strategy to put black actors, to make black actors household names. They were not able to carry movies on their own. I believe, according to, I will say what I believe Hollywood believed about black actors was that they were not able to carry a movie on their own, not a crossover or mainstream or, pop movie, right?
Hmm.
And so in order to do that for people like Eddie Murphy and Will Smith and Danny Glover, and even Sidney Poitier, whether they're talking about race or not, they made them play, not opposite, but they made them do two-handers where there are two protagonists, right? They can't be a single protagonist, there are two protagonists. And so this is where you get um, this these I don't know. I don't want to get. I'm about to say some real political stuff right now, and I'll save it. I'll save it.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me.
So so I was like, I don't know how deep you want me to go into that, so I'll just save it. But my point is, Lethal Weapon is one of those movies where I think it's very important to acknowledge that we maybe wouldn't have somebody like Danny Glover, because it just wasn't a thing in the 80s. I brought it up because Lethal Weapon 4, though it is one of, I loved Lethal Weapon 4, I do think that racially is incredibly problematic. The dentist scene,
Mm.
um, where they're all high in the dentist office or whatever, I think that scene, whoa, whoa, whoa. But this is a product of the times, um, and the trouble with getting movies made with non-mainstream actors. I'm
I can see
trying
that.
to think. I'm trying to think. Had I seen Jet Li in a Western movie before Lethal Weapon 4? I don't think so. I
I
think
think that
all
was
of the
Romeo versus not versus Romeo Must Die, and I think that the one and all of those followed Lethal Weapon. I
came
think he was just
after.
a yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I found it culturally and racially troubling, but still a good movie if I don't get into a conversation about that.
So we'll say for the sake of argument that Lanita wants to put the racist Lethal Weapon franchise as an S tier franchise. That's what she just
Is
said
it
to
is it,
everybody. That's
but here's the thing. I'm saying
I'm
that
kidding. I'm kidding, by the way.
most of these movies are racist, right? If you say Eddie Murphy can't be a star unless he's playing opposite Nick Nolte, that's pretty racist, But that is what it was.
I have a lot of calls for Rush Hour to be an S tier franchise. I'll say that a lot of these franchises that are left, I have as A tier franchises. I think that they're just even with some of the missteps. I think that they have films in the franchise that are just that strong. Uh, Rush Hour is a franchise for me. The third one is just not good. It's just not good. If we could rate franchises on just one film, then I think a lot of these would move up to A's and S's. But that third film
Yeah.
in Rush Hour is really not what's up. So that's why I couldn't do an S tier on Rush Hour. I could do an A tier on Rush Hour. I could do a B tier. I
Yeah.
probably couldn't drop it lower than a B. But
I would
that
say
third
A.
film. Okay, so we're in agreement on that one. That's good stuff.
Yeah. Ip Man is going to be S tier for me. Even
It,
with the one you and I just had a conversation, the one where he goes to the tournament and Bruce Lee is actually in it, isn't as good as the first films, but it's still going to be an S tier for me.
I had Eat Man as the A tier. I think some of these S tiers going to have to move down. Eat Man is great though. I think that Donnie Yen really showed us that there was at least in Western and for Western audiences, there was this lull for kung fu karate type of films where there just wasn't that many that were really popping off here anymore. And then you had it was like Ip Man and The Raid. Those two films really kind of brought them back. And I think Ip Man worked so well, not just because of the choreography and the fighting sequences, but because they are really great dramas. That second film will make you cry, you know. So it's very much so one of the top films here. Let's get some bad ones out the way. RoboCop first film, amazing. The legacy sequel's terrible. The third film's terrible. I don't remember the second film. I think that RoboCop is a C or D tier type of, even though it's an 80s. If you think 80s, RoboCop's one of the things you think, but I think it's just because people were trying to cash. That's the thing with these franchises. Studios try to cash in and they don't care about the property. They know everybody will go see it, and they mess it up. So RoboCop, because of its sequels, I had D. I could probably be talking to C on that one, but it's just not where it's at for me.
Um, yeah, so I'll stick with you on that one, and not just for agreement's sake, but because I think a part of what is so awesome about the original RoboCop is it's so totally 80s. And a lot of what I really dislike about sequels is when they abandon what makes the first one awesome. And so another one, it's like chasing that first high, you know what I'm saying? Like The Purge. You know what I'm saying? This is a franchise. I don't know if you would consider it an action franchise or a horror. I consider it horror action. But the concept is such high concept, but the movies can never quite live up to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think RoboCop has a similar problem where what made that first RoboCop so awesome is that it was so quintessentially 80s, and then the subsequent ones just couldn't recreate that, you know.
So our second D tier might be a hot take for some people who love RoboCop, but I think that what's been said has been said. Let's talk about family. You know, we couldn't get to this conversation without talking about family, specifically the family of Dom Toretto in the Fast and the Furious franchise, a franchise that is going to have its 10th film, and I think it has one or two spin-offs within the franchise. There is a lot of really ridiculous car type of sequences that would never work in real life. There is a lot of bad acting, but there's also a lot of people having fun. People flock to these films, I think, as a means to escape. I am not a fan of really any of them except for maybe two or three, but it's hard for me to diss it because it resonates with so many people and it makes so much money because people really enjoy these films. And I don't want to go against that. So I really don't know what to do with Fast and Furious. You can do D tier, you can do A tier, and I wouldn't really be able to argue one way or the other in terms of the way that I feel about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What was the spin-off movie that they did with The Rock? and
Hobbs and Shaw.
Hobbs and Shaw. So are you considering that a part of the franchise?
Anything related to the original. So just like I had like Super Cop and First Strike and stuff and Police Story, anything that's
Okay,
like
okay,
a legacy sequel,
okay,
a spin-off, all those types of films would count as
okay.
franchise.
So I'm gonna say there's a lot of movies in Fast and Furious. Um, when they first came out, it was during a time in my life where all I wanted was like sexy vampire movies because I was a young like girl, right? And now I'm getting back to my roots where I love action movies. I returned to the franchise, um, and I really have enjoyed myself. Like I said, it was a Fast and Furious movie that made me understand how much I actually love Jason Statham as a martial artist. Um, but Hobbs and Shaw for me was terrible. It was actually infuriating. And this is the one. So I
I
might
remember.
say
I
this, and
never
you
remember
have
talking to you about this. Yeah. Uh huh.
yeah. So this is the one, and I don't. I want to say this. This might be a spoiler because I don't remember how they handled um, the publicity around it. But this is the one that had Kevin Hart in it, right?
Yeah, he had a cameo in it. Uh huh.
He had a cameo in it, and it also had Idris Elba in it, right? This is the one.
He
I'm
was
thinking
the
this.
Idris Elba was the big baddie. Yeah, he's a super
Yeah,
charged guy.
yeah. And so in this movie, so The Rock, I'm very sensitive about race in movies. I really am. And when I say sensitive, I have a particular way that I like for race to be treated, for black people to be treated in movies. I grew up in an era, so my consciousness is shaped by the raging against we not all bitches, we not all hoes, we not all pimps, we not all thugs, right? I grew up, it was colors, like everybody's a gangbanger, everybody's a drug dealer, right? So, this is what my consciousness around blackness in movies is shaped around. And I mean Western movies, because you have some international movies that do a great job in depicting black people. And so for me, The Rock, I see somebody like The Rock as a black man. And I want to see him however he says he is, but I don't know that he ever is like, I'm not just black, I'm black and Pacific
I
Islander.
think I've seen interviews where where he discusses himself as being black, but also recognizing his
Yeah.
Samoan roots because of his mother. But he sees himself in
Yes.
the world as a black man.
And so for me, the way that blackness is depicted as a punchline for me is not okay. And in this movie, I don't even remember the joke, but it was in the scene that he did with Kevin Hart, um, and he started like kind of like cussing, and I think he was like talking about pimp slapping somebody, something crazy like that. But then when he went to talk about his other roots, it was this big show of respect and of tradition. And I was like, what is this? So your blackness is reduced to this right here, but then your other side, your Samoan roots, we're going to have a big, and you should have a big display of reverence for who you are. But let's have equal treatment for both sides. That's how I felt about it. So Hobbs and Shaw gives if I can get extra thumbs, I want to do more than just two thumbs down. So, and then this is after he the biggest dude on the planet, The Rock. Okay, and we watching him. You know what? I'm gonna stop talking about that. I'm gonna stop. I'm finna get worked up. I'm finna get worked up.
Based on
Right.
how you're getting worked up, just off that one movie alone, it seems like you're not a big fan of the franchise. This franchise just has a lot of duds in it, and terrible movies in it to me. So I'm going to go D tier for Fast and Furious. We're going to get some hate for that though, but I just don't think that
I'm
it's that
I'm
great.
I'm gonna say C. I'm gonna
C.
say C.
We'll move it up to
Yes,
C.
yes, because there are some movies that I have enjoyed, and after going away from a franchise and coming back and going, wait a minute, I actually really like this. For me, that's an important thing to be able to accomplish for a piece of work, a piece of art, and or entertainment. But for me, Hobbs and Shaw was oppressive in nature, and I say
Let me see if there's anything else here that's pretty easy to do. Indiana Jones, I think, is easy, but we'll see if we. I feel like some of these other ones we would have more consistency on too, so maybe not. So, what do you think about old Harrison Ford? And he's going to have I think the sixth film is going to come out in the Indiana Jones franchise, or the fifth film in the Indiana Jones franchise is about to come out. Not counting the TV shows and the spin-offs and all that type of stuff, but yeah, what do you think?
you know, um, I'm gonna say I love Indiana Jones. It was one of the greatest movie going experiences, all of them as a kid. Um, yeah, I'm in. I'm in. I keep my heart open for any subsequent installments of Indiana Jones. Yes. Um,
I had Indiana Jones as A tier with a possibility to move up. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is not as bad as people say it is, but the ending of that film is atrocious, and some of the CGI is atrocious, which makes me nervous about this new film because they've de-aged Indy so much in the new film. But I think that Indiana Jones, this legacy and just the quality of the first three films, Raiders, Temple of Doom, and um, The Last Crusade, keep it at the A at least. And we'll see what
yeah,
happens.
yeah. And did they say? I don't know. I would love to see Ki Hui Kwan come back.
Hmm. I don't know if he's on the. I don't think he's involved in it. Let me see if they've announced the
That would
whole
be
the
so
whole
dope.
cast yet and the
That would
dialogue
be
that's in
so
it.
amazing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you would not consider. Well, I'm thinking it through. Yeah, you wouldn't consider that. Uh, like so one movie that I thought was an action franchise, but I'm thinking it through and I'm like maybe it wouldn't be considered an action movie, and it's not an action movie, not the original, but the subsequent films. What do you think about Planet of the Apes? I know it's not on the list, but would you consider those subsequent movies action movies?
I think a Planet of the Apes is a much more sci-fi than action. The trilogy that had the legacy trilogy that happened in the 2010s has a lot more action to it as opposed to
Hmm.
a lot of the dramatic roles of. I actually haven't seen any of the Planet of the Apes except for the original one. I know there's one that came out in the 90s. I didn't see that one, but I hear that it was really
Hmm.
bad. But I consider it more sci-fi, so that's why it didn't make the list. I mean,
Yeah,
the main
yeah,
characters are CGI monkeys, so that have been tested on in this post-apocalyptic world. So
yeah,
um,
yeah.
let's
Okay.
talk Predator.
I didn't like Prey for many of the same reasons. I think
Really,
there
I
has,
love Prey. You didn't like Prey, the one that's on Hulu?
yeah. I know people loved it.
It was stripped down. I think that I liked the Native American aspects of it and the cultural aspects of it, and I think that they handled that pretty decently. I want to see Amber Midthunder in a lot more films. I don't know why that didn't really get her more contracts the way I thought it would. I think she has a TV show coming up, but she should have gotten films after that. But you know how things go in Hollywood for you know people with some melanin, even when we have hits. I wonder if it would have been different for her in terms of offers if that film would have came out and did well in the actual theater as opposed to being a straight to VOD type of film. But Predator, you have to also remember that Alien versus Predators, all of those are in here too in terms of this franchise. So you have the first one,
Oh
which is
yeah.
amazing. You
Mhm.
have the Danny Glover one, the second one, which I like the second one with Danny Glover in the middle
Yeah.
of the Chicago. I don't know why people didn't like it.
No, no,
I'm
it's
not saying it's a
good.
perfect film, but people didn't like it. But after that, it gets really, really weird for Predator for me.
I agree. I agree. I wouldn't consider Predator to be a A tier. Probably probably the highest I would give it if I considered, because it it was such a incredible idea, the original, and it was so scary. It was so scary. Just the sound of that monster's footfalls, or his um what would you call that, rattling, that the sound that the monster makes. It was just really great, tension building and anticipation, you know. But then I agree with you, it gets weird in there. um didn't the Predator go out of space at one point?
But yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it was like, I
and
mean, I
and
guess
that,
he's from outer space, but it just seems, it seems very long shot. Why are we? It feels like we're grasping for content with that. So I think C, all things considered.
I go with that because you didn't like Prey as much as I did, which
Yeah.
is understandable. But Predator, that's the thing a lot with a lot of these sequels. I mean, we have the greatest action star of all time in Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he doesn't have a level franchise to speak of because they have all these cash grabs, so they want to keep the IPs going. So they come up with other ways. A lot of it had to do with him becoming governor and not acting in a lot of these films too. But you know, it's
Mm.
sad that some of our best franchises from the '80s just kind of got done the way they did just so that the studios can make some money off the property or they can keep the IP. Speaking of films like that, I think that this property did a little bit better than some of the others, but I'm talking about the conservatives' wet dream of a franchise, which I actually can find a lot of things that I can relate to in terms, or I'm empathetic or sympathetic about the plight, and that's Rambo. First Blood plus two, Rambo Part Two, Rambo Part Three, which is just a straight up action film that I think betrays some stuff, but then it gets back to what it was when he started to come back with those sequels in the late 2000 and the early 2010s. I think we have 6 movies in the franchise of Rambo with Sly Stallone. What are your thoughts?
Um, I think, for me, Rambo is Rambo is classic and it's legendary. But when I think about why it's classic and why it's legendary, some of it is because of the era that defines it or that it defines, but then also because Stallone, right? Stallone is just, you know, pretty. You said Schwarzenegger. I might have to push back a little bit and say Stallone as the action hero. So, um, for Rambo, I would say maybe B for me.
That's where I had Rambo too. I had it at the B tier,
Yeah.
flirting with the A tier for me. But there is
Hmm.
some issues with some of those. Like I feel like when Sly Stallone brought Rambo back, he did it as a passion project and wanted to do it right and to kind of course correct that third film and a little bit of that second film because they were made kind of, I feel like, just for. I know that actors hate when people say that you do stuff just for money, but that's what it kind of felt like to me. Um,
Hmm.
Shaft
Yeah.
is a franchise that I have a weird relationship with. I love the first Shaft for both its significance and what Richard Roundtree was able to do, what Gordon Parks was able to do with that film. Shaft out of Africa is very zany and weird, and I don't know how I feel about that film. I do not like any of the remakes, the legacy sequels with
Samuel Jackson.
Samuel L.
Yeah,
Jackson, especially that last
Samuel
one.
Jackson.
The last one was just really, really bad. So the legacy suite sequels really hurt this franchise quite a bit in my eyes. Even though the first one is really cool film, and the second, I don't know if Africa was the second or third one, but I think Out of Africa is just a weird, in a good way and a bad way type of film. From what I remember, I haven't seen it probably in 6 or 7 years, but that's what I remember of it.
I agree with you. I'll be honest. I know Christian Bale was a child actor, but the first place I saw him was in that first Legacy Shaft movie. Um, and the role that he played in that movie made me hate him as an actor for many years after. It just was so heavy handed and so grotesque that I just had it took a long time. It wasn't until Out of the Furnace came out that I said, okay, I think I actually love Christian Bale. That's how significant um, the work is for a movie, right? The responsibility that a movie has. Actors are always trying to negotiate whether they should take this project or that project and who's attached, because it really can change somebody's mind, change an audience's mind about them, good and bad, right? And so, because of that, I will have to agree with you. I didn't really like the legacy films. I love Samuel L. Jackson, and Shaft could have been a completely iconic role for him, but it just was not well handled overall. So I'm going to have to say C minus.
Mm-hmm. I I would hate to put it in D because I just think that the first Shaft is better than the Kingsman, so I don't want to put it in the D tier.
Yeah.
So C minus is good for me. Just for sake of time, we have Bourne, Die Hard, John Wick, Mission Impossible. We have 2 more spots in the S tier, and we can put these anywhere we want. Going into this, these four franchises, I had all A tier, with some of these flirting with S tier. Mission Impossible was flirting with S tier, and the Bourne franchise for me was flirting with S tier. Just given the full filmography of those films, the ups and the downs of those films, one by one. And I had John Wick as an A tier, probably the best action franchise of the decade to me. And then Die Hard, because of those last 2 films, I had it as an A tier instead of an S tier. I could be talking to Die Hard being an S tier though, because the first 3 films to me are just that good. Do you want to do like a round robin on those and just kind of give me your thoughts, and we can kind of figure out the rest of the list from there?
Yeah. Let's do a round robin. You tell me where we going. If you wanna talk about Die Hard, I'm gonna tell you the original is every year on my top Christmas movie list. I know it's a huge debate whether it's a Christmas movie. As far as I'm concerned, it's one of the best of all time. So um, I think the strength, and for me, the last movie wasn't. I enjoyed it more than you did, so I would put it in the S column. Die Hard.
Okay. Okay. I can do that. Bourne. Are you a Bourne fan? I'm a huge Bourne
I
fan.
am a Bourne fan. I've loved Matt Damon ever since they were working with Kevin Smith, and so I'm a fan. I was very pleased when he brought on some action to his resume. Um, I will say at the time for me, I appreciated what's her name? Um, is Franca Potente, right? I appreciated
Hmm.
her. Run Lola Run is one of my all-time favorite movies, and I didn't think. I mean, she was a great cast, and I'm glad she got a job. But I wish that movie would have done more for her career and setting her up for greater opportunities as well. And I don't know that it did that. And so I would put Bourne in the A column, but not the S column.
Okay. Since we put Die Hard in the S column, then I would be fine putting it in the A columm because we did have the Jason Bourne movie that came out in 2020 or 2019. It was not bad, but compared to the other films, I think that it did take a step back, which once you get to 5 films, that this tends to happen. I think that really the only franchise that we've talked about so far that's had some Teflon against bad films or mediocre films in the franchise is James Bond, just because it's so iconic and there's so many of those films that it's hard to debate that. I like John Wick a lot for a lot of different reasons that I think that based off of some of our conversations on John Wick doesn't connect with you in terms of the experiences with the video game references and the anime references and the story beats that are in there, the world building that happens in John Wick. I think that there is a John Wick Parabellum is probably the weakest point of the franchise, but even that film, I think I had as one of the best films, maybe a top 20 film of that year when it came out, just because of. I even talked about my review, the Western type of implications to this too, where he's very much like the man with no name in these films, and it's almost like a love letter to a lot of different types of forms of media to tell these stories. This John Wick franchise is, and also maybe I'm feeling a little sentimental with Lance Reddick passing away, but I've been thinking about this franchise quite a bit recently and wanted to revisit. Yes. So, but I had John Wick as an A tier. And then I left Mission Impossible there because it's still an S tier for me. But I know you said you hated Mission Impossible with all your guts. I'm trying to remember if that was the direct quote. You hate Mission Impossible. You think it should be an F out of anything there, and that I should have never even considered it a franchise. I think that's what you said, right?
Oh yeah. You shouldn't consider it a franchise. Tom Cruise is the ugliest dude on the planet. Like. And so no. So I love Mission Impossible. Don't get me wrong. I see all of the movies, but comparatively, I am like the first movie was banging. I'm trying to find the first one. What was the very first Mission Impossible? Because the actor that he cast, I had only seen her in one other movie. And she was in. I wish I had known that I was going to talk about this movie. And so when I saw that Mission Impossible, it was like, oh my goodness! I don't know if you know the '80s movie Date with an Angel, and I think her name is Emmanuel or something Emmanuel. And she played an angel, and I used to think
Emmanuel Bart, God. Isn't it Bart or Bart? Emmanuel Bart.
And so, and I hadn't seen her in anything else. And so for her to show up in Mission Impossible in a movie that, like you said, it's doing all these incredible feats, like when he gets so close to the ground, and like there were exciting things that were in that first one. But as a franchise, like many of them, if I have to talk about the full franchise, I can't give it an S tier because it's not recreating that for me. Like The Matrix. The Matrix is my third favorite movie of all time, of any movie I've ever seen. And but the sequels, so I couldn't give it an S tier because we're talking about franchises.
Also, I think that Mission Impossible, out of all of the franchises here, has the best returning cast. I mean, people might say Fast and Furious because there's so many recognizable names there, but when you have Vin Rames coming back and Simon Pegg coming back in all these films to be kind of like the Q and the muscle and the tech person for all of these films, I think that they do add something in terms of the original Mission Impossible didn't have all the tech type of stuff that eventually comes with Mission Impossible. I think that the MacGuffins are always, if I could say anything, I have a love-hate relationship with all the MacGuffins in the films because there's always something that's really super complicated that's hard to understand. Your knock list to your, this
Yeah.
vial of whatever is going to blow up and destroy the world, and it's kind of just like whatever it needs to be to get Ethan Hunt to the next scene or get him running again. It's just
Yeah.
so.
And I agree with you on that. I mean, this is a very highbrow observation that you're making, but I agree with you. When we think about the film that makes the MacGuffin such a powerful tool in a movie, it's Citizen Kane, right? And
Mm-hmm.
Rosebud is the MacGuffin in Citizen Kane, and it's so simple. It's
Mm-hmm.
so simple. And so you're right, when it's got to be this whole complex thing that you got to work, do physics 5 days later on to figure it out. It's like you've done too much. Your MacGuffin should be so simple, I think. So I agree with you there.
So I'll put Mission Impossible in the A tier. I think
Yeah,
that
that's fair.
the just again, just for the record, I think Mission Impossible is a better franchise than both Lethal Weapon and Eat Man, but we'll keep it in the A tier. I'm not gonna say it's better
Then
than
Eat Man?
I,
Then
I do.
Eat Man?
I do. I think it just has more to
I
offer than Eat Man.
No, I don't think that.
The
So here's the thing.
the
You got to
The
think
Mike
about Mission
Tyson.
Impossible in terms of all of Tom Cruise's movies too. Mission Impossible, not even Tom Cruise's best movies. I mean, like, I think that
The,
something a little bit ridiculous like Night and Day is more memorable than
really?
some of the movies in Mission. Yeah, yes, yes. It's
Oh.
not even Tom Cruise's best movies. No, no, no.
I think he would. I think he would argue with you on that one. That's why he keeps making them. But I think that
I think that
I
I
think
think
that the Eat.
his money makers. But if he had six more Top Gun under his belt, like Maverick, like the original, right? He's making better movies. They're not all franchises, but he's making better movies than Mission Impossible. Yeah.
I don't think Mission Impossible is his best film. If I was to think about it, just off the top of my head right now, I'd probably say Born on 4th of July is probably his best film I've ever seen him in. But that's a very dramatic, kind of really depressing
Yeah,
type
yeah,
of movie.
it's not really
Um,
action. Yeah,
that's not really like what he does anymore. But in
yeah.
terms of Ip Man, the Ip Man with whichever one has Mike Tyson in it, that Ip Man is worse than any of the bottom three of the Mission Impossibles to me, and it's not even
I
close.
love
Not
Mike
even close.
Tyson
I hate.
in
I don't
Ip
say I hated
Man.
it. It's just not. It's just a very. When you compare it to the other films in that franchise, it is just so beyond mediocre to the standards that it's set as a franchise. It's a very mediocre film towards its standards, not in terms of all films, but the standards of Eat Man. It's just such a
I
drop
would
off.
agree that is not as good and they continue to decline. So I'm glad they quit when they did. But, I thought the story was still good. And I thought it was a great use of Mike Tyson. I think it was a better use of Mike Tyson for me personally than The Hangover. You know, I
He wasn't
enjoyed Mike
Hangover.
Tyson. Yeah, you know, so I don't know. I can agree that it's a decline from the other Eat Man installations, but not a bad movie.
John Wick's still sitting here. I had it as
Yeah,
an A tier franchise. Again, the best franchise of the decade, in my opinion, that started this decade or started in the last 10 years.
mm,
But you don't feel the same. I don't think it can go lower than a B for me. It's really hard to take it out of A, but I could work with you if you wanted to put it in B.
I would say like um, for me, again, I really love an action movie with a simple concept. And you killed my dog, so I'm killing all y'all. It's really, they turn that simple concept into something quite magical, quite affecting. And there's a lot of sentiment to go along with the action. And there's a lot of, in the first one, there is a lot of gunplay that is appropriate for people who like shooter video games. But I think it kept the action um, diverse enough that people who don't play video games could
Hmm.
still truly appreciate it. The middle two movies were not that great for me. Um, but this last one, and we're not going to say a whole lot about it, because your review still needs to come out, right?
Oh, it's out. I put it out yesterday.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. So what I will say is I think that this fourth one abandons the viewer who doesn't play video games. I think that a lot of the action, if not almost all of the action, is geared toward people who like to sit down and play hours and hours of video games. And that's not the viewer I am. I'm the viewer who likes a traditional action flick. I like some good, like you said, weapons play, some good hand to hand. Like, and so,
mhm.
um, and comedy, and yeah, so I think it kind of abandons the kind of viewer I am
Yeah, I
in the
was looking
fourth
up
one.
some stuff on John Wick because I've had conversations with a lot of people who think that John Wick 2 is the best one. And so I looked up Rotten Tomatoes is a hit and miss type of thing, but uh,
Sure.
and just to prove it, John Wick, the first one, is the worst rated film of the franchise, which to me is really silly compared to that. Especially that third one was not where it was at compared to the first two to me. But I see what you're saying there, but you still gotta commit to a letter grade of where would you like to see it, so I can see if I'm gonna pull my beard out or not.
I would give it an A minus.
Yes, yes,
Yeah?
yes.
Yeah, I think
John,
this is one of your S films, and so you're okay with the A minus?
I had Born, Mission Impossible, as S films, and then was S tier. I think I had John Wick as A tier, and I had Born. Let me look at my notes. I had Born, Mission Impossible, James Bond, um, Die Hard was on the list of possible. Mad Max was actually S tier for me, and you said that it was. Remember, that's where we started. Mad Max was my fifth S tier, and you said you
Yes,
you
yes. Well,
you got all the way down to
it's
B.
just because of Fury Road. That's all. If we were just doing the original installments, I would give it higher.
So, just to recount, we didn't use all five S tiers, which is fine. We have S tier. These are the best of the best, the cream of the crop. James Bond, Lethal Weapon, Eep Band, and Die Hard. A tier. Beverly Hills Cop, The Dollars franchise, Police Story, Rush Hour, Indiana Jones, Bourne, Mission Impossible, John Wick. The B tier, Bad Boys, The Terminator, Mad Max, Charlie's Angels, and Rambo. The C tier, The Transporter, The Expendables, Taken, Fast and Furious, Predator, and Shaft. And then the D tier is the Kingsman franchise and RoboCop. So I don't think we beat any movie up, any franchise up too bad. I can, outside of a couple of digs here and there on the A tier versus S tier, I think we're actually pretty in line with 90% of this list. So thank you. Let me get back to so I can see everybody and see if there's any comments that we missed while we were discussing. We have Michael. Let me get
Is
to
it Michael Davis or
Mike.
Mikhail or that's a
My,
cute name.
Michael
Yeah, he's
Davis.
very yeah.
He said the remake was cool for RoboCop. Um, if you say so, Michael. Indiana Jones 4 was horrible. Yes, it was. Um, Predator 2 is the best one to me. And I think that maybe it has something to do with the black lead in that film, and maybe that's why it resonates with us with more than it does with other folks. But I just like the city aspect and how they really try to do something different with the second film. The first film was all of these military guys with these superior weapons and all these things, and you have this street cop who's basically trying to outsmart this predator. It was a really cool way that they did it to me. So I'm with
Yeah.
that. Sierra says Mike Tyson and Ip Man was hilarious, and hilarious does not mean
Yes.
good. Sierra says now Brian. Sierra Davis's favorite franchise, I think she said this earlier, is Rush Hour. I know that they probably had issues with me saying Rush Hour 3 is not good. I'm not saying Rush Hour 3 is like trash, but to say that Rush Hour is S tier, which is where they were trying to put it earlier, and have Rush Hour 3 sitting in the background where a lot of that film, nothing is happening at all. It's kind of hard for me to do that, but hey, I appreciate your comments and your sentiment. You have to agree to disagree. I think I hit all of the comments there. One more time for the listeners, Lanita, where can we find you?
Oh, that is so wonderful. I've had such a great time. Brian, you know movies, okay? This was so fun. And you're going to make me brush up on some stuff. People can definitely find me on Instagram at Lonita Cook. That's LONITACOOK. And if you want to read any of my reviews, my theater reviews, my cultural reviews, you can find me at blackbbuzz.com. That's BLACKBEEBUZZ.com. And I also contribute to newthinking.com out of the UK.
And let me just say, as a blogger and writer, that Lanita's articles are all fun, no matter what she thinks about a film or a certain event, negative or positive. They're always fun to listen to. If you can get to KCTV5's YouTube channel or their Facebook channel, I know that everybody's in Kansas City, but we have a global audience here at Brian Knows Movies. Check her out there as well. And then if you like this setup and liked us going back and forth, let me know in the comment section below if you're watching this on rewatch, because we have some ideas cooking. Maybe we'll do some more collaborations or something even a little bit more final or more in line. That's going to be on like a weekly basis. I'm not making any promises, but we got some ideas. Let us know if you want us to pursue those. Next time I have her on and we do a tier list, I'll make sure to not have 25 movies so it takes us as long as a movie to get through it. But I had a lot of fun. I thank Lanita so much for giving me her time. And thank you guys so much. I will see you at the theaters next week.